You ever wake up one morning and feel like your whole world's been pretending to love you? That's exactly how I felt the day I decided to test mine. You see, on paper, I was that woman everybody envied. Big house, nice car, a little business that paid well, and two grown kids who called every Sunday just to check in. At least, that's what I thought. But life has a funny way of showing you the truth. Not in grand gestures, but in quiet moments that sting your soul. I remember sitting on my porch that morning, coffee in hand, watching the rain slide down my window, thinking, if I lost it all tomorrow, who would still stand beside me? I had a gut feeling, a mother's instinct, that maybe, just maybe, all that love I've been giving and getting was tied up in money. Lord have mercy, that thought ate me alive. So I made up my mind right then. I was going to find out who truly loved me. Not the money, not the comfort, not the pretty home. Just me, their mama, plain and simple. I called it my poor mama test. And baby, if I'd have known how much it was going to break my heart, maybe I wouldn't have done it. But once you open the door to truth, there's no closing it back. The first thing I did was disappear from the world I'd built. I told everyone I was selling the house, downsizing, I said. Truth was, I just moved across town to a tiny one-bedroom apartment I'd rented under another name. Old furniture, faded curtains, no fancy things, just a place where no one would recognize me. I even changed my phone number and got one of those old prepaid flip phones, the kind that barely works half the time. I wanted to feel invisible. And let me tell you, it's a strange kind of freedom when people stop expecting things from you. Then came the hardest part, reaching out to my own kids. I made up a story that my business went bankrupt, that the bank took my house, and I was living off odd jobs and little savings. I didn't tell them where I was staying, just that I was struggling. And I waited. I waited to see who'd come running, who'd offer a helping hand, who'd even ask if I'd eaten. The first few days, I got sympathy texts. Hang in there, Mom. It'll get better. But as weeks went by, those messages slowed down. You know how people vanish when you got nothing to give? That's how it felt. I sat in that little apartment most nights, staring at my phone, waiting for a call that never came. It's funny. You can raise people with everything you got, and when it's gone, it's like you never existed. I started volunteering at a church kitchen just to keep my heart from sinking. Those folks didn't care about who I used to be. They just saw a woman trying to help. I found comfort in strangers, kindness in people who had less than me. And that's when I started to see life from the other side, the side money can't buy. Still, late at night when the city got quiet, I'd wonder about my children. Would they even recognize their mama if they saw her like this, and worn clothes, hair tied back, walking with tired feet? That question haunted me. Weeks turned into months. Then one day, I overheard my son on a phone call. He didn't know I was nearby. He was talking to his sister, and what I heard made my knees weak. He said, "Maybe she's just exaggerating. She always liked attention." And my daughter replied, "Well, if she really needs help, she'll ask." That right there, that sentence cut through me like a knife. If I really needed help, I'd ask. I'd spent a lifetime giving before anyone asked, feeding them, covering bills, showing up. Now I was hearing that love had conditions. I hung up quietly, walked back to my room, and cried the kind of cry that empties your soul. That night, I realized something. This test wasn't just about them. It was about me too. Maybe I'd been giving love in the wrong way, tying it to gifts, to help, to money, instead of boundaries. Maybe I had created my own heartbreak by never teaching them how to love without expecting something in return. And that realization hurt more than any lie ever could. As I sat by the window, I made myself a promise. I'd finish what I started. No matter how painful it got, I'd see this test through till the end. Because sometimes you gotta lose yourself completely just to find who's been standing beside you all along. And trust me, what I was about to discover next would shake every bit of faith I had left in family. I thought pretending to be poor would show me who loved me most. But what I found instead was a truth so cold it made me wish I'd never asked a question. You ever sit at a table and feel like you don't belong there anymore? Like the chairs that once felt like home suddenly turned cold and the walls started listening to secrets they shouldn't hear? That's exactly how I felt that evening, sitting in my daughter's fancy house, staring at the life she'd built, the life I once dreamed she'd have. Only problem was, she'd built it high enough that I no longer fit in. Now, let me back up a bit. She'd invited me for dinner, said she wanted to check in after my little fall at the grocery store. I smiled when I got that call. Lord knows my heart danced for a second. Maybe, I thought, maybe she missed me. Maybe my little test was already working. I put on my same worn-out coat, brushed my hair, and walked the long way to her house. I could have taken the bus, but I wanted to arrive slow, to feel that walk, that ache, that reminder of what I was pretending to be. Poor, forgotten, invisible. The moment I stepped inside, I could smell rosemary chicken, candles burning, something expensive on the stove. And there she was, my daughter, Lisa, dressed up like she was serving a magazine spread. Smiling, polite, not warm. She showed me to my seat like I was a guest. That's when I knew things had changed. A mother shouldn't feel like a visitor in her child's home, you know? The food was perfect, too perfect. Every fork and knife lined up like soldiers, napkins folded into triangles. Even the plates looked like they'd never seen a dishwasher in their life. But the silence. Oh, honey, that silence had weight. She talked about her job, her husband's promotion, her daughter's piano lessons. I just nodded, chewing slow, pretending to be impressed. Not once did she ask if I was eating all right these days. Not once did she say, "Mama, do you need anything?" I looked at her wrist, gold bracelet. Looked at her nails, manicured. Looked at her smile, tight. Everything screamed success except her eyes. Those eyes used to light up when she'd bring me daisies from the backyard. Now they just scanned the room, avoiding me like I was a stain she couldn't scrub out. Then came the moment that burned me deep. She got up to pour wine, and when she came back, she said, "Mama, I've been meaning to ask, are you okay living like that? You know, in that old neighborhood? Maybe you could look into some affordable housing or something." Oh, Lord, that hit different. I smiled. I kept that fake sweet smile plastered across my face. Affordable housing. Like I was some charity case. Like she forgot the woman who worked double shifts to buy her those very fancy shoes sitting by the door. I sipped my water slow, trying not to let my hands shake. Every sip tasted like disappointment. She didn't mean harm. At least I don't think she did. But sometimes harm don't come with intention. It just walks in through the door of pride. When I left that night, she hugged me, the kind of hug that says, "I did my duty." And as I stepped out onto the cold porch, I whispered to myself, maybe she passed the surface test, but she's failing the soul one. As I walked home, the streetlights flickered like they was whispering too. Maybe telling me to keep going. Maybe warning me that this test I'd started was only going to get harder. Because deep down, I wasn't done yet. The next week, I decided to raise the stakes.
If she couldn't see me in rags, maybe she'd see me when I needed help. Real, desperate help. So I told her I might lose my apartment, made up a story about my landlord kicking me out. She texted back 2 words. That's tough. That's when my heart cracked a little. Not all the way, just enough to leak. But something in me refused to stop. If she could fail me, maybe she could still redeem herself. Maybe she just needed one more push, one more chance to prove she still had that little girl heart inside her grown-up chest.
So I decided I'd show up one more time. This time not to ask, just to be. I'd go to her daughter's piano recital, uninvited, and see how far that pride stretched before it snapped. I showed up that Saturday, sitting in the back row, my old coat still buttoned tight. Lisa spotted me halfway through the first song. I could see the panic in her face, that same kind of panic folks get when the past walks in and reminds them who they used to be. After the recital, she came to me, all smiles again, the kind you wear when there's company watching, told me she was so glad I came, but I could see the embarrassment ripple through her like cold water. Her friends looked at me like I didn't belong there, like I was just some lonely old woman who wandered in for free music. And maybe I was. That night, I walked home under the same flickering streetlights, but my heart wasn't heavy anymore. It was sharpening. I wasn't just a poor mother pretending. I was a mirror, showing her who she'd become. She thought she was passing my test, but baby, the real one was just about to start. Because I had one last plan, and this one would tell me everything. I'll never forget whispering to myself as I closed my front door that night. Next time, she's gonna learn who her mama really is. Little did I know, the test I was planning to give my daughter would end up testing my heart instead. Because sometimes, when you pretend to be broken, you find out just how fragile love really is. Let me tell you something, baby. Sometimes you set out to teach a lesson, and somewhere along the way, life flips that chalkboard right back at you. I thought I was the one in control of this story, the one holding all the cards. But what I didn't know was that hearts don't play by the rules you write down. After that dinner, I couldn't sleep for days. Every time I shut my eyes, I saw Lisa's face, that polite smile, that cold tone, that looked like she done her duty just by feeding me. I'd wake up in the dark, sitting in that little one-room apartment with the leaky faucet dripping, like time itself was mocking me. I kept telling myself, this test ain't over. You can still fix this. But deep down, a part of me already knew maybe I wasn't just testing her anymore. Maybe I was testing whether a mother's love could survive pride. So I made a plan, one that would push her heart to the edge. I'd pretend to get sick, not dying sick, just bad enough to need help, bad enough to see who'd show up when I couldn't stand up on my own 2 feet. I called her that Friday morning, my voice weak like a worn-out wind. Told her I'd been dizzy, that I'd fallen again, and that the doctor said I needed rest. She paused for a second, then said, "Well, Mama, you should really hire someone, maybe a nurse or something. You can't be living alone like that." And there it was, that same polite distance, that comfortable guilt, the kind folks give when they care just enough to sound decent, but not enough to get up and move. I hung up,
sat there on the edge of my bed and felt the weight of silence fill that little room like smoke. So I took it further. I called her best friend, Stacy, and told her the same story, made sure word would spread. And then, just to twist the knife of fate a little deeper, I left a voicemail on Lisa's phone that night, breathing heavy, whispering that I might go to the hospital. And then I waited. Day 1, no call. Day 2, nothing. Day 3, not even a text. The 4th day, though, my phone finally rang. I picked it up slow, heart racing. It wasn't Lisa. It was Stacy. She said, "Hey, your daughter told me to check in. She's been real busy, but she wanted to make sure you're okay." That was the first time I truly broke. I hung up, put my face in my hands and cried. Not the pretty kind you see in movies, the kind that leaves your breath shaking and your chest hollow. Because in that moment, I realized something I never wanted to admit. Maybe I'd failed her just as much as she'd failed me. Maybe I'd raised her to chase comfort, not compassion. Maybe I'd taught her to fear poverty instead of understand it. Maybe she wasn't heartless. Maybe she was just blind the way I once was, when all I wanted was to escape struggle. Still, I couldn't give up yet. I had one final card to play: the truth. I decided I'd invite her over, one last time, tell her I was moving out of town to some retirement home that didn't exist, see if she'd even blink. When she came, she looked flawless. Hair done, makeup neat, wearing that expensive perfume that filled the whole room before she even spoke. I watched her walk around my small place like she was afraid to touch anything. I told her I was leaving. I said, "Ain't no one here for me anymore, so I might as well go where it's quiet." She just nodded, said she understood. Then she pulled out her wallet, handed me $200, folded neat. I stared at that money, my hand shaking. $200. That's what my motherhood was worth now? I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her everything, how I'd been watching, testing, waiting for her to show some warmth. But instead, I smiled, that fake tight smile I'd learned from her. When she left, I sat on that same old chair, the one with the torn cushion, and whispered to myself, "All right then, the lesson's over." But what I didn't know, what I couldn't have guessed, was that fate was about to turn the page for me. Because the next morning, when I stepped out to check my mail, there she was, Lisa, standing by my door, tears in her eyes. Said she had a dream of me laying on the floor calling her name. She said she woke up shaking, couldn't breathe. And for the first time in years, she wrapped her arms around me like the world was ending. And Lord, I held her. I held her tight. I didn't even care if it was guilt or love or both. It just felt real again. That's when I realized maybe she didn't need to pass my test. Maybe I needed to stop giving it. But before I could say anything, she pulled back, looked at me, and said, "Mama, what if I told you I knew all along?" Oh, honey, my knees almost gave out. She smiled through her tears. "She knew you weren't broke. I just wanted to see if you'd tell me the truth." And that's when it hit me. I wasn't the only one giving tests. Turns out the student had been watching the teacher all along. And what came next? Lord have mercy. That truth tore open everything I thought I knew about love, pride, and the price of pretending. You ever think you're the one holding the secret, only to find out you've been the fool all along? That's how it felt standing in that doorway, my heart beating like a runaway clock, my daughter staring at me with tears still glistening under the sunlight. I swear, for a second, the world went quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, the heavy, suffocating one that sits in your chest and won't let you breathe. She said it again, soft this time. Mama, I knew. And Lord, those two words felt like thunder. I didn't even know what to say. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. It was like every lie I told to test her, every act I put on, came crashing back at once. Lisa stepped closer, her voice trembling, but steady enough to cut through my guilt. She told me how she'd seen through it weeks ago, how the stories didn't add up, how she checked with my landlord, and how she knew that poor act was never real. She said she wanted to see how far I'd go, to see why I was doing it. And baby, that hit deep, because for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like the teacher anymore. I felt like the child who'd been caught sneaking candy behind the counter. I sat down right there on the porch step, my knees too weak to hold the truth. Lisa knelt beside me, her perfume still lingering in the air, sweet and familiar, like the daughter I used to rock to sleep when the world outside our old trailer was too loud. She said, Mama, I just wanted to know if you'd trust me with the truth, if you'd ever stop trying to test me and just talk to me. And Lord, those words tore me open, because she was right. I'd been testing her heart, but I'd never opened mine. I'd been playing the victim, wearing poverty like a disguise, thinking I could teach her humility. But all I was teaching her was distance. She told me about her own struggles, how hard she'd been working, how scared she was to fail, how she built all this success not out of pride, but out of fear. Fear of falling back into the kind of life we'd crawled our way out of together. She said, every time you pretended to struggle, Mama, it reminded me of those nights I cried myself to sleep 'cause you skipped dinner to make sure I ate. And just like that, I broke. My tears weren't quiet anymore. They came like rain after a long drought, rolling down my face, my shoulders shaking. Lisa held me, rocking me slow, whispering that she wasn't mad, just hurt. Hurt that I thought she didn't love me enough to know better. You see, when you spend your life raising a child to be strong, sometimes you forget to tell them it's okay to be soft, that it's okay to be human. Lisa said she hadn't called for a few days not because she didn't care, but because she was ashamed. She'd felt like a failure for not doing enough. She thought if she gave me space, I'd forgive her silence. But silence, baby, don't heal anything. It just builds walls where hugs used to be. We sat there for hours talking, not as mother and daughter, but as two women who'd both been scared of losing love. I told her why I did it, that I just wanted to know she'd still care if I had nothing. And she told me I should have known she always would, no matter what. And maybe she was right. Maybe I should have known. But Lord, life ain't that simple. We both carried wounds from the same storm, hers from wanting to escape it, mine from never leaving it behind. Then she said something that I'll never forget. She said, Mama, sometimes love don't need test. It just needs time. That hit me like scripture. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in years, I didn't see the stranger wearing success like armor. I saw my little girl again, the one who used to draw hearts on my hand with a broken crayon and say, "That's forever, Mama." We laughed a little, cried a lot, and then she said she wanted to spend a few days with me, just the two of us. I almost said no, I'd have had to, out of pride, but this time I said yes. For the first time, I let her take care of me. Those next few days we cooked together in that tiny kitchen. She helped me fix the leaky faucet. I watched her scrub the counter I'd been complaining about for weeks, her sleeves rolled up like old times. And one night, she told me she'd been saving for something. Not for herself, for me. Said she wanted to buy me a new place. Not fancy, just close enough so she could visit more. And I swear my heart swelled so big I thought it'd crack. I didn't need her money. Lord knows I didn't. But I needed her wanting to. That was worth more than any check. Still, even in that warmth, there was a part of me that couldn't forget how close I'd come to losing her. How pride almost burned the bridge between us to ashes. Sometimes it ain't money that makes people poor. It's ego. And I've been rich in it. So I promised myself no more tests, no more games. From now on, I tell her the truth even when it hurt. But little did I know, life had one last twist waiting for me, one that'd prove whether both of us had really learned what love costs when the acting's over. Just when I thought the test was done and our hearts had healed, fate threw us one more curve. And this time, neither of us was pretending. Because when real tragedy walks through the door, love either stands tall or it breaks clean in half. You know, sometimes life don't wait for your lessons to end before it throws another one your way. I thought my story with Lisa had wrapped up neat and tidy. A few tears, a few laughs, a promise to do better. But life, honey, don't care about neat. It cares about truth. And truth, Lord help me, don't come gentle. It had been a few months since that day on the porch. Me and Lisa had started seeing each other regular again. Sunday dinners, coffee runs, little calls in the middle of the week just to say, "You eatin'?" I swear those 3 little words could fix almost anything between a mama and her child. We were happy, not perfect, but peaceful. And peace, well, peace can make you forget that storms always circle back around. That September, I'd been feeling off, tired all the time, lightheaded, but I brushed it off like most mamas do. We don't like worrying our kids. We'd rather limp through pain than make them stop their busy lives for us. I told myself it was just old age, maybe the heat, maybe stress. But one night, while I was making tea, the whole room spun like a carousel. The next thing I knew, I was on the floor, the kettle screaming, the world fading out. When I woke up, I was in the hospital. Lisa was there, still in her work clothes, eyes red like she'd been crying for days. The doctor said it was my heart, said it'd been working too hard for too long. And let me tell you, nothing humbles you faster than waking up to tubes in your arms while your child holds your hand like she's scared to blink. I tried to smile, told her I was fine, but she looked at me and said, "No more pretending, Mama." That broke me all over again, because for the first time, she wasn't the one being tested. I was. She stayed with me the whole week, slept in that uncomfortable hospital chair, ate those sad little sandwiches from the vending machine, barely left my side. Every time I opened my eyes, she was there, hair messy, makeup gone, love raw and real. One night, when the ward was quiet, I asked her why she hadn't gone home. She said, "'Cause I still remember what it felt like thinking I lost you. I'm not making that mistake twice." I turned my head away so she wouldn't see the tears. Funny how the lessons you try to teach end up coming back to teach you harder. I spent so much time trying to test if she loved me. I never tested whether I could let myself be loved.
After I was discharged, Lisa moved me into her home, said it was non-negotiable. Lord, she sounded like me when she was little and wanted that last cookie. I didn't argue. My pride had already packed up and left the building. Those first few weeks living with her was something special. Mornings started with the smell of pancakes instead of instant coffee. Evenings filled with laughter instead of silence. I'd sit on her porch watching her daughter, my granddaughter, play with her dolls and think, maybe this is what love looks like when it finally grows up. Lisa would come home late sometimes, tired but still smiling. She'd ask if I'd taken my pills, if I'd eaten enough, if I was feeling okay. I'd tease her, say, look at you mothering your mama. But deep down, it felt good. It felt right. Then came the day that sealed it all. A day I'll never forget as long as I breathe. Lisa had planned a small family dinner for my birthday. Just a few folks. Her husband, the grandbaby, a neighbor or two. But what I didn't know was that she'd planned something bigger behind the scenes. Halfway through dinner, she stood up, cleared her throat, and said she had something to show me. I watched her walk to the door, her hands shaking just a bit, and then in walked a man with the camera crew. Lord, I nearly choked on my mashed potatoes. Turns out she'd pitched my story, our story, to a local station. Said she wanted to share it, to show folks what pride and forgiveness can do to a family. At first, I was mortified. I thought, Lisa, don't you dare air my foolishness on television. But then she looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, Mama, I want people to see what real love looks like when it survives itself. And just like that, I gave in. The story aired a week later. They called it The Mother Who Pretended to Be Poor. Lord, that title made me cringe. But when I saw the footage, me and Lisa talking, laughing, crying, I didn't see shame anymore. I saw a lesson that finally made sense. People started writing letters. Folks saying they hadn't called their mamas in years and now they did. Daughters who said they finally understood what their mamas meant by I'm fine. Husbands, wives, families, all finding themselves in our mistakes. And that, baby, that's when I knew the test had done its job. Not because anyone passed or failed, but because we'd both learned how to be honest again. Now every morning, I sit on that same porch with my coffee, watching the sunrise over Lisa's yard. Sometimes she joins me, sometimes she don't. But every time she walks out that door, she kisses my cheek and says, Love you, Mama. And I believe her. No tests, no doubts, no pretending. Sometimes I think about that first day I decided to fake being poor. I thought I was clever back then, thought I was teaching a lesson about gratitude. But Lord, turns out I was the one who needed humbling. Because money, pride, comfort, they don't mean nothing when love goes unspoken. You can't measure affection in visits or dollar bills. You measure it in who shows up when the world starts spinning. Lisa showed up, and that's all I ever wanted. Now, if you're listening to this, if you still got somebody out there you love but ain't talked to because of pride, call them. Don't wait for a test. Don't wait for a trick. Life's got a way of giving you the real ones when you least expect it. And by then, it might be too late. I don't know how many more birthdays I'll get, but I know one thing for sure. I ain't dying with regrets. I'm dying full of love, full of peace,
and finally full of truth. Because the truth is, sometimes the poorest folks in the world are the ones who got everything but forgiveness. And me? Well, I pretended to be poor, but I ended up richer than I ever dreamed. And that, baby, is the story of how a mother's test turned into a miracle, how pride turned to mercy, how distance turned to home. So next time you think about testing love, remember this: real love don't need proof. It just needs a heartbeat. If you felt this one, stay a while. There's always another secret to tell here on Whispers of Auntie Mae.